Have you ever wondered what has happened to the United States and its once vibrant culture? Have you ever wondered why a virtuous American culture has been in decay for over 60 to 70 years? The book Deus Ex Machina, God from the Machine, explains how foreign belief systems have been imported into the United States by foreign intellectual agents to be used to fundamentally transform the most prosperous and free nation in the world into a typical third world country. Learn how the progressive academics, progressive activists, large corporations, and the mainstream media have become appendages of the federal government, a Praetorian Guard, and an extension of the political vanguard class. Deus Ex Machina exposes the cogs of the machine that progresses our civil society to chaos and subjugation. Get this tool to educate others and illuminate the truth on the battlefield of ideas. Let's make a difference. Get Deus Ex Machina, the progression of secular socialism, from Amazon.com and Lulu.com today.
You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
We're here to fix the machine.
Battlefield Live.
You're listening to the Battlefield Live with Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network, the Battlefield Live radio program. Want to thank you for joining us on the Battlefield today, and I'm really excited for our next guest that is going to be in Baton Rouge tomorrow, 7 p.m. at Louisiana University. And as always, he's stirring up a lot of mud in the media, including in The Advocate. And I want to bring on our friend Milo Yiannopoulos. What's going on, Milo?
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I think that what you've done in politics, as well as people like Donald Trump and others, is somewhat of an anomaly. And I would say that one of the things, like I look what the media is doing in regards or reaction to you. They're calling you the leader of the alt-right, which you've said that you were the queen of the alt-right, or at least that's the way that they would seem to make it. And the alt-right has sparked some controversy, and you have clarified your position in the alt-right. And I wanted to see if maybe you can explain the nature of the alt-right and what it is that is giving the staying power that we're seeing right now in the political discourse in America.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I think a lot of movements, whether they're in Europe or in America at the moment, are animated by a similar kind of contempt for the elites, the people who rule over us. You know, the unaccountable, unelected, international, bureaucratic, incompetent losers who run things like the Olympics and the UN and the EU. And I think the Republican Party in America has been a pretty good example of how not to rule over people and how not to, respect the wishes of your voters. The Republican Party is no longer fit for purpose in this country, as far as I can tell. It sneers at its own voters. It doesn't listen to their concerns. It's more interested in the power of the free market than the fact that, globalization, these global forces haven't served everybody very well. It's also giving into the left on things like political correctness, and it's starting to police its own language, starting to sort of acknowledge the power of the arguments of the wacky progressive left. And the alt-right is it's a number of things. It is concern about immigration, concern about the effects of globalization on wages and on culture. It is, anxiety about demographic change. It is a total rejection of political correctness. It is in many ways a strong counterbalance, a strong response to the excesses of the far left over the last 30 years. And it is, I think it's fair to say, by far the most energetic, youthful, and exciting thing to happen to American politics, perhaps in 2 decades. Now, the media keeps calling me the head of it, the queen of it, whatever. No, that's of course not true. All I've done at Breitbart is try to give the movement a fair hearing, try to accurately describe the contours of the movement, who's in it, what they care about, what they want. Of course, for the mainstream media these days, anything less than screaming racist at a conservative is enough to sort of brand you just as bad as them. So, they've tried to sort of do the guilt by association game. But basically, this is a very exciting, new, young, grassroots, conservative and libertarian movement that is blowing holes in the establishment. And it's very fun to watch. And there is, of course, an overlap. It's not identical to Trump's constituency, but there is an overlap with the people who are excited about Donald Trump.
So people like or groups like the Vox Group and Salon have made some comments about the alt-right and doing what typical liberal left-wing media outlets do. That Vox said it's a movement lurking in Reddit and 4channel threads. In community blogs and forums, a movement of right-wingers who openly argue that democracy is a joke. And Salon was said that the alt-right is also known as white nationalism. What would you say to people that are kind of getting that bias in the media and it's kind of looking at the alt-right in that way?
Well, almost everything you read about the alt-right is wrong. Almost everything you read about the alt-right has got more to do with the journalists trying to advertise their own moral virtue and trying to reassure their colleagues that they're not racist than it is a genuine attempt to understand this movement. The reality is there are some concerns from some members of the alt-right about, immigration, about all sorts of, external forces acting on the United States. And for the most part, these people are right. There's a lot of concern about Muslim immigration in particular, and the effect of the turmoil in the Islamic world on America. To be perfectly honest with you, the vast majority of things that I see the alt-right complaining about are fairly unarguable. What the left-wing press wants to do is put them in a bucket like neoconservatives or like white nationalists or whatever. Just sort of put them in a little cul-de-sac so that other people don't look into it and don't realize that actually, the political correctness has gone too far. Open borders have gone too far. Globalization hasn't worked for everybody. There are a lot of vested interests in the left-wing media that really want to isolate this movement and paint it as something hateful, which it really isn't. If you actually talk to anybody in the movement, if you hang out where they hang out, if you read any of their stuff, you realize actually this is a very young, very smart, very funny group of people who have just had it with the establishment. They don't like Republicans, they don't like Democrats, and they're trying to blow it all up and build something new. Personally, as a sort of engine of chaos, I find that quite exciting. I also think that their analysis of the major political parties in America is basically right. Both of them are unfit for purpose.
So we're speaking to Milo Yiannopoulos. He is the tech editor for Breitbart and anti-political correctness activist. So Milo, you've mentioned in I read your article on Breitbart about the not being necessarily a part of the alt-right per se, and one of the things that you said is that you quite honestly like Israel, and that the alt-right is a sort of fundamental hostile or fundamentally hostile to the foreign entanglements that may or may not serve America's interests. And I'm fairly you're an unreconstructed Zionist, and I don't expect everything to agree with that.
Right.
So I guess in this statement here, it seems that the comment that the alt-right doesn't have these anti-Semitic movements and so forth, and it's actually an anti-white racism movement. Is there a big part of the alt-right that is anti-Israel or anti-Semitic?
I think the primary motivating concern for the alt-right isn't a hatred of Jews. I think it is a desire to see America rid itself of foreign entanglements that don't serve America very well. Now, I'm a little more hawkish, I suppose you'd say, over here in general than the alt-right. I was for the Iraq War, and I still am, which is a relatively rare position to take. So it's one of the many things I differ with them on. But the alt-right, I think, just want to sort of stop all of these constant profitless entanglements in foreign wars. Now, what you will see on Twitter is a lot of very, very edgy jokes, and sometimes spilling over into really unpleasant stuff. But my argument has always been, and I think I'm right about this. My argument has always been that the primary motivating factor behind the trollishness and meanness and cattiness of the alt-right that you see so much on Twitter is really just coming out of troll culture. It's trying to wind people up. Now, the alt-right has identified that some people who are identifiably Jewish in the media, whether it's Ben Shapiro or the guys at National Review, whatever, seem to have quite a thin skin about anti-Semitism, and it doesn't take very much to get a rise out of them. And when somebody sense weakness on the internet like that, they tend to get their friends involved, and they tend to want to just sort of wind people up. I think a lot of it is just to do with getting a rise out of people and trolling. I don't think a huge degree of it is genuine anti-Semitism. If you believe that there is this huge, abrupt, sudden, and it's just appeared out of nowhere, this huge outpouring of anti-Semitism among 20-year-olds in America, you have to explain, where did it come from? Like, why would that be the case? I just don't believe it. And nobody has ever made the case that nobody has ever explained why that might be. All they've done is said, I saw these awful things on Twitter. Well, yeah, the internet is a place where you wind people up. And I'll tell you something about what conservatives don't always understand about young people. 20-year-olds have nobody alive in their families who were alive during the Second World War or experienced the Holocaust, right? They don't understand, because they're not taught properly anymore in schools, the unique historical significance and the difference between, let's say, sexism and racism and anti-Semitism. Jews are people who have been persecuted since there have been Jews. Tacitus said, 2,000 years ago, Tacitus was saying that the Jews were a people born for slavery. People have hated the Jews forever. But a lot of young people don't understand that. And when they see, when they see people on the conservative right pearl clutching about anti-Semitism, it looks a lot to them like people on the progressive left pearl clutching about racism, pearl clutching about sexism. They think that it's just the right-wing equivalent of what the left does, and they don't take it tremendously seriously because they don't really understand what the difference is. And, we're perfectly happy as conservatives to laugh along when people are mocking feminists, as we should. We're perfectly happy when to laugh along when people are mocking Black Lives Matter, which is an eminently ridiculous movement, and they deserve mockery too. To young people, there isn't much difference between mocking people who get too touchy and too precious about anti-Semitism and go looking for offense where there isn't any. If you understand that the alt-right fundamentally is a reaction against political correctness, against victimhood and grievance culture, you can start to understand why they have limited tolerance for people who are always looking to be offended by something. And sorry to say, conservatives do not have an unblemished record on this. Conservatives very often do get needlessly offended by, the word Jew appearing can send people into paroxysms of anger and, cause them to lose all powers of reason and fly off the handle into incoherent rage. Just like lefties, do the same thing when a remark is perceived as sexist. Well, that's what's happening. And if you understand that, it makes a lot more sense, and you can take heart in the fact that there isn't this gigantic outpouring of anti-Semitism among America's youth. They just don't care about, tiptoeing around people's feelings. And I think that's all that's going on.
I honestly think that, and you can witness this on, on the cultures on college campuses, and you may even see this when you're out there, that the anti-Semitism is really from the left, and it comes from that pro-Palestinian left wing. Anti-expansionism.
Absolutely. Isn't it rich to see Vox and BuzzFeed and Gawker and Mike and the New York Times and the Washington Post all suddenly upset about people offending Jews? I mean, these are the people who've been making excuses for Palestinian terrorists for decades. These are people who hate Israel. These are people, who really don't have Jews' best interests at heart. But because they've identified another way to attack conservatives, suddenly they care about Jewish people's feelings. Give me a break. Right.
So, one of the things that you have been so successful in doing is really exposing political correctness for what it is. I've often called it cultural Marxism, and we're seeing it.
Right.
It's been around for quite a while. I believe that it really showed its ugly face in the 1960s in the United States, but it's kind of been embedded into our culture. And one of the things that you've said is that the alt-right movement is not going anywhere. And while it appears to be a panacea of the European-style Marxist left here in the United States, what prevents the alt-right movement from becoming similar to what we've seen from the European right-wing movements, or what some would call fascist right?
Well, I think what makes it different is that, I don't have a problem with American nationalism because America is founded on principles, not on ethnicity or geography. And America is founded on the Constitution, the First and Second Amendment. And these are really good bases for building a country. And they've built the best country in the history of human civilization, the United States of America. It's a really great place. And I don't see anything wrong, and I don't see any risk in celebrating freedom, capitalism, democracy, property rights. The freedom to be, do, and say whatever you want. That's what America is. Now, other European countries have different sort of roots to their national identity, and some of those are geographic, some of them are ethnic. Because America is founded on ideas rather than places and skin color, I see no reason to worry about patriotism in America. I see no reason to worry about nationalism in America, Western, sort of not white nationalism, but Western nationalism, because it's not about skin color; it's about ideas. The American ideal, the American dream, and the ideas on which America was founded are things that I think it's perfectly reasonable to be proud about and perfectly respectable to celebrate. So that's what I don't worry about the alt-right turning into the same kind of movement as you might say maybe Front National in France or AfD in Germany, which has, I think, more of a racial undertone than the alt-right really does.
So I guess the biggest concern that I've had in looking at the alt-right from the outside, because honestly, I came into politics around about the end of the George Bush era, George W. Bush, and the Tea Party, rise of the Tea Party movement. And of course, we watched the Tea Party kind of morph into something that it really wasn't intended to be. It became more of a Republican establishment group rather than what it was truly, I believe, intended to be, about the founding of the nation and the principles of America and so forth. And, from looking at it from the outside in, one of my concerns is that the alt-right has stood up now to the cultural Marxist, the political correctness crowd, and it's somewhat of a participation in the class warfare, if you will. And I think that what you do, and I think that it's not just you but others, you are very successful in being able to stimulate the media, if you will. The best way I can explain it, right?
Yeah, they can't help themselves but write about me.
Yes, and I think it's a good thing because for the most part, you can't get their attention unless you're, Beyonce. But I think that I guess my concern is that there's a lot of people out there that haven't, been fundamentally taught, or they don't practice the fundamentals of America because they're ingrained in these cultures of Marxism on our college campuses. And I'm wondering from you, do you hear from the people on these campuses, the people that are attending your events? Do you hear from them about the founding of America, the Constitution, or is it just kind of more? Are you getting mostly the anger against the pigeonhole that they've been put in?
Well, I can give you some cause for optimism here, because in the majority of cases, when I go and talk at universities, they're very frustrated at not being taught proper history, and very frustrated at the biases of their professors. But to be frustrated at the bias of your professors, you have to know they're biased, which is to say you have to know that there are other points of view out there. So I don't think the situation is totally irreversible. There are very, very serious problems on American college campuses, and some of the students who are not as intellectually curious might well be, being taken in by myopic and far-left college professors. But the majority of the people I speak to know a little about America's history, know why it matters, are proud of this country, and love it, and support me because I think they see a visitor to this country who loves everything about about America, about why it's here, what it does, and what a great country it is. I think there's cause for hope here, and I particularly say that because when I speak to younger people of about 13, 14, 15, they really get it. And many people, sort of the post-millennial generation, we don't really have a word for them yet, the post-millennial generation really doesn't like a lot of the political correctness. They're quite into free expression, and they're quite into being naughty and mischievous and subversive and difficult and devious. They don't like feminism very much. They often say mean things about BuzzFeed. So I'm a lot more optimistic about the future than a lot of other conservative and libertarian commentators. And I do think America has a bright future. We've just got to get over this awful millennial generation.
So we're speaking to Milo Yiannopoulos he's a tech editor over at Breitbart and anti-political correctness activist. Milo, you mentioned recently at one of, I'm not sure which date it was because I've been watching your videos as you post them. You mentioned that the Black Lives Matter movement, or at least Black Lives Matter generally, needs to be criminalized. Explain that, what you mean, and how would that look in your mind?
Well, I want everyone to be able to say, do, and be whatever they want. I want people with wacky ideas to be given pedestals and platforms and microphones, because I think that in the open marketplace of ideas, the best arguments win. And that means sometimes I'll lose. If I don't have the best argument and somebody else beats me in debate, then I will lose, And I think that an open, fair marketplace of ideas, which doesn't exist in very many places in America, definitely not in the media, and certainly not in the universities, is a really good thing. So what I'm not saying is that Black Lives Matter should be censored or silenced. I want to hear those arguments, and I want everyone to hear those arguments because I want everyone to hear how crazy they are. But Black Lives Matter is more than just a political movement. It has become something that looks a little bit like a terrorist organization, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. How many police lives are they responsible for ending? How many times do they celebrate the deaths of police officers? Now, you can't stop people celebrating the deaths of police officers, but you should draw attention to it because it tells you something about the movement. Should that be a crime? No, these people are entitled to have horrible, appalling views if they want to. But the moment they go out on the streets and start burning down black communities, but the moment they start becoming responsible for the deaths of police officers, that is the moment when this organization has turned from merely a group of people with wacky opinions into a threat, into a dangerous group that is doing real harm, not just to police officers, but also to the black community, also to other black people, leaving black communities in ruins. This, and using the threat of violence and the fear of physical repercussions to push a political agenda is the definition of terrorism. And that, it seems to me, is where Black Lives Matter is headed.
So one of the things that, whenever I come across, a movement like the Occupy Wall Street movement, I kind of dug really deep into that group as far as where they were ideologically. And one of the first things that I did when I heard, Black Lives Matter was kind of becoming, all over it was all over the internet and so forth. And I went to their website, to their guiding principles page. And I mean, this thing reads like something out of the Communist Manifesto. Right?
Oh, for sure. Oh, this idea about like living together in communes and all the rest of it. This is you've got to understand. The feminist, the far left feminist movement, Black Lives Matter. They're all basically communist organizations. They play identity politics in different directions. Sometimes it's about women, sometimes it's about blacks, sometimes it's about gays. But all of these organizations are basically communists.
Yeah, so and it's not many people out there like me that get excited about reading commentary on Friedrich Hegel or Immanuel Kant or Marx. But when I read on their page, it says we are committed. This is one of their guiding principles. We are committed to the disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement and supporting each other as extended families and villages, quote unquote, that collectively care for one another and especially our, quote unquote, children to the degrees that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. There's no mention of the father figure at all in this.
No. Well, this is what the left does, of course, is what the Clintons did to the black family. Bill Clinton, by imprisoning got untold numbers of black fathers with his crime bill. They replaced the black father with the state. Why do black people vote for Democrats, even though it's not in their interest to do so? Because the absent black father has been replaced by the state. Why do feminists always want more government, more regulation, all the rest of it? Because they want to replace a man, replace a husband, replace a father figure with the state. This is basic, simple, communist politics. strike out the father figure because he's an alternative power center and replace him with the clunking, machinery of the government. This is not a mystery to anybody who understands where these movements come from, whether it's Black Lives Matter or feminism or the gay lobby or any of these other far left organizations. It's all about control. It's all about enlarging the size of the government. It's all about whether you should be allowed to live as you please, do what you want, say what you want, be what you want, free from interference from the federal government, or whether you think you should outsource all the serious decisions in your life to someone else.
Milo, do you think that movements like Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, is a reaction to events, and then the left swoops in, the intellectual think tank left swoops in and hijacks the momentum of those movements in order to be able to perpetuate Marxist change in the country?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again? I'm sorry, the signal just cut out for a second.
That's okay. So do you think like movements like the Black Lives Matter movement or Occupy Wall Street or even like the feminist environmental movement, whatever, that these movements, that the intellectual left or what would you call the think tank left, do you think that they swoop in and hijack the momentum of these movements to perpetuate fundamental Marxist, cultural Marxist change in the United States?
Well, it certainly appears to be the case. When these movements require, a sort of critical mass of momentum, they start to become funded by, Soros's Open Society Foundation or whatever it is. There's certainly a point at which these organizations become co-opted by people who have vested political interests. That has definitely happened to feminism. It's definitely happened to Black Lives Matter, which is being funded by, some wacky, weirdo, globalist, socialist, lunatic. It's definitely the case that when these movements get to a certain size, they become attractive targets for co-option. And I think that's exactly what's happened with Black Lives Matter. And where it goes from here is terrifying. You have the same guy who is sticking up for Black Lives Matter's right to leave their cities in flames. The same guy who is funding, these awful feminist organizations that are tearing families apart. The same guy is just pledged. It was on the Drudge Report, I think, yesterday or today, in fact, just pledged $500 million to go to settling refugees in the West. This is an extraordinary and very sinister political agenda, which is basically all these organizations eventually follow the money. They all can be traced back to this same political idea. The globalist, what Donald Trump would call the false song of globalism.
Milo, do you have a few more minutes to stick with me through the next segment?
Certainly.
All right, so hold 1 second. We will talk with Milo Yiannopoulos. We'll be back on the Battlefield Live radio program with Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network. We'll be right back after this short break.
What has happened to the United States and its once vibrant culture? Have you ever wondered why a virtuous American culture has been in decay for over 60 to 70 years? The book Deus Ex Machina, God from the Machine, explains how foreign belief systems have been imported into the United States by foreign intellectual agents to be used to fundamentally transform the most prosperous and free nation in the world into a typical third world country. Learn how the progressive academics, progressive activists, large corporations, and the mainstream media have become appendages of the federal government, a Praetorian Guard, and an extension of the political vanguard class. Deus Ex Machina exposes the cogs of the machine that progresses our civil society to chaos and subjugation. Get this tool to educate others and illuminate the truth on the battlefield of ideas. Let's make a difference. Get Deus Ex Machina, the progression of secular socialism, from Amazon.com and Lulu.com today.
You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
We're here to fix the machine.
Battlefield Live.
You're listening to the Battlefield Live with Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network, the Battlefield Live radio program. I want to thank you for sticking with us on the battlefield today. You can tweet me at Paul Revere again and at Lanterns Buzz on Twitter. And on the phone, we have Milo Yiannopoulos, who's going to be in Baton Rouge, Louisiana tomorrow. As Milo's call it, the Fat City, because we are. And he's going to be there at 7 p.m. Tomorrow night and speaking to a large crowd. He is the tech editor at Breitbart and an anti-political correctness activist. And Milo, I got a question about immigration for you.
Sure.
You've mentioned, and this is a quote from one of your articles, you said immigrants should come to America to make a better life for their family, not turn into the hellhole they came from. A lot of people look at the alt-right, they look at Donald Trump as anti-immigrant. Can you please clarify, to us, where do you stand on immigration and where is the misconception?
Well, I don't see Donald Trump as anti-immigrant. He's certainly anti-illegal immigrant, and that's enough to be branded racist by the progressive left these days. Simply saying that people who have no legal right to be here shouldn't be here. That's apparently racist these days. No, I think he's definitely against illegal immigration. My position is a little stronger than Trump's, to be honest. I think there's a significant risk to many of the cultures in the West, and they are the best cultures. The West is the best. America is the greatest country in the world for a reason, because it has the best values. I think there is a risk in inviting in, millions of people from all over the world, many of whom do not share your values and don't have the same respect for women, for blacks, for gays, for you name it, as Americans do. Now, I think that Trump has correctly identified the Muslim world as one of the places where people, by and large, do not share our values. And this is not, by the way, just the terrorists. This is not just extremists. This is ordinary mainstream Muslim society. I think it's 100 million people live in countries, all of them Islamic, where they can be killed for being gay. It's about 11 or 12 different countries. Mainstream Muslim society treats women like crap. And violently oppresses or murders homosexuals. The social attitudes of Muslims living in the West are terrifyingly reactionary, far worse than the supposed, Christian religious right we're supposed to be so terrified of. And liberals will sort of skirt over this inconvenient set of facts and seek to welcome in many more of these people into our countries because they have a sort of death wish. Well, I don't want these people in our countries because I don't want another Orlando. And I don't want to see, women covering up in the streets and feeling at risk at train stations late at night. That is happening in Europe already. That is a reality in Europe. You cannot allow that to be America. You cannot allow that to start happening in America because if that happens in America, what makes America great is gone. And that, I think, is what Trump is responding to, a perfectly respectable, reasonable set of concerns from American people that, what has happened in Europe as a result of stupidity, weak leadership, and insane politics, people are worried that that's going to happen in America. They're right to be worried because all the signs suggest that politicians here will do the same as politicians in Europe did. And Trump is saying, no, let's stop this and let's work out what the hell's going on. Let's try and figure out if we can vet these people before they come in. All of that seems to me eminently reasonable.
So the biggest concern I have with immigration is the assimilation aspect of it, because
right.
One of the things Donald Trump has said, it's his motto, "Let's make America great again." What has made America great is the focus on the government being a protector of rights rather than a provider of rights. And
Correct.
I think the missed opportunity with immigration and the way that it is now and not the way that it used to be is that the immigrants that are coming here are not learning the responsibilities and their civic duties and the proper role of government. I think some of that is by design. I believe
I think it is. Yes, I think you're right about that. the thing is, the left doesn't like this country very much in many ways. When the left looks at America, it sees a broken society racked with sexism, racism, all the rest of it. They want to rebuild it, and they see almost any culture as being superior to America's. So they import lots of them, and they make them dependent on the state. What they're effectively doing is importing voters, guaranteeing future electoral victory by bringing in tons of people who are going to vote for them because they become dependent on the state that the Democrats have a vested interest in enlarging. The problem is that many of these people, have belief systems so far out of the mainstream American culture that it creates huge social problems. Now, for the most part, people do assimilate over generations. But there's one group of people who haven't. And you can see this in Europe. That Muslims living in Europe are getting worse, not better. We are seeing now Pakistani Muslim immigrants in London flying out to ISIS. The UK sends more fighters to ISIS than any country except Belgium. The Pakistani community is becoming more radicalized, not less. And it is the first community in the history of the United Kingdom, which is a nation defined by violent and dramatic demographic change. It is the first wave of immigration of its kind not to assimilate. And all of the places in the world in which these problems are happening, they are happening with the Muslim community. This is a religion that does not assimilate. That's why Americans, I think, are right to be very cautious about it.
So, Milo, I want to shift gears a little bit to more of a cultural question. And I watched probably, I don't know, I've watched your videos over a period of time, but today I kind of did a little bit of research just to make sure I had all my quotes right and so forth. And one of the things that really caught my attention was a comment that you made. I'm not sure if what venue you were at, but this is what you said about homosexuality. You said that when the left tells you that people were born this way, that was an invention. You said they came up with that in the 90s and the 80s to get at the religious right, who were saying love the sinner but hate the sin. So the gay lobby thought, well, what if we like women or blacks? What if we don't have a choice? And one of the things that I've gotten in a lot of in-depth debates about, including with my wife, who's a nurse, is the fact that I believe that through experiences and things like that, because the choice I believe that you make is who your sexual partners are going to be is due to a lot of experiences that you have. But explain what you mean by that it was born this way was a fabrication, and maybe as you mentioned TMI, what does that mean to you, and is it choice? How can we make choices about whether or not we're a man or a woman, but we can't make choices about whether or not we want to sleep with someone with the same sex? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So basically, there's no scientific basis to suppose that people are born lesbian or born gay. It is almost certainly a mixture of nature and nurture. But the left says it's all born this way because it wants to avoid. Basically, in the 80s and 90s, the religious right was saying, that it was a sinful lifestyle choice. So the gay lobby came up with this thing. Well, what if we're like blacks or like women? What if we're just born gay? That way, if you don't like gays, you're a bigot because there's nothing we can do to change it. And normal, nice, respectable people don't go after people for what they're born with. They can't change. The reality is it's a mixture, particularly the case of for female sexuality. This is why I sometimes jokingly say on stage I don't really believe in lesbians. Very few women only have relationships with women throughout their whole life. You get a lot of people scoffing and laughing at the idea of gay conversion therapy and all the rest of it. But there is some evidence to suggest that it might work for some people. And my point in raising this subject on stage is to say, look, a lot of these supposed truths that the progressive left is telling you don't have much basis in science, and this supposed side of science, the party of logic and fact checking and reason and all the rest of it that liberals love to present themselves as, well, they're just as dogmatic as everybody else, in fact. And normally life is much more messy and complicated than the progressive left would like you to believe.
Yeah, I always think to me I see it as a liberal progressive paradox, and mentioned as I mentioned before with determining whether or not you're a man or a female or in between at the same time that it's not a choice to be homosexual, it always to me looks like a means to an end. In other words, they project their or inject their political policies into these false truths in order to be able to perpetuate whatever ends they wish to do. I mean, we saw this with Obamacare, and they weren't even shy about saying, I think it was Rahm Emanuel said that, we have to, utilize the means to an end tactic in order to get single-payer health care. So I guess to me this it's a common thread amongst all of the things that they're active about. And even at the one of the members over at the school that you're about to go to, a girl by the name of Courtney Murr, she's a president of Spectrum and an LGBT student group. She says using inflammatory language and is misogynistic and racist and homophobic and all kinds of things, which half of this is incoherent. So we don't want someone like this speaking at LSU. That's basically talking about you. But at the same time, she'll stand up on a podium and want her freedom of speech, right? So
yeah, well, I think you can see, there was a remark made by the University of Delaware's Gender and Women's Study Department today. They wrote an open letter saying how awful it was that I was coming to campus, and the sort of weird pretzel logic. The end result of their letter was, we believe in free speech, except for that gay guy with the wrong opinions. That's pretty much the approach of the progressive left to me, because they can't win on merit.
Yeah, well, you don't fit into the box that they want you to be in, because they believe that if you're homosexual, you should be of the left.
Exactly, and I take great pleasure in not fitting into that box, because it confounds them. They got so lazy over the last 30 years, assuming that they owned everyone, that they were able to dictate what you should believe, that they forgot how to argue. They forgot how to really bring it. So the quality of debate from the progressive left is very poor. All they do is name call. They call you racist, they call you sexist, they call you homophobic. Even as a gay man, they call me homophobic. It's how stupid they are. I mean, it's so funny. It is funny. Every time they do it, I laugh, because it never gets old. They're just dumb. All they have available, the only toolkit they have in their argumentative arsenal is name calling. It's so funny.
So Milo's going to be in Baton Rouge tomorrow night, 7 p.m. That's Wednesday, and he's going to be. And you're going to be speaking at LSU. Is there any topics that you're going to cover, or you're just going to wing it?
Yes, I'm going to be talking about fat shaming. If you want to come, there are still tickets available, so you can go to my page on Facebook. Just look for Milo. If you just put Milo Y, you'll find me on Facebook. And the tickets are still available. It's going to be at the LSU Union. I think it's called the Union Theater. In Baton Rouge. I've got 2 opening musical acts, which are going to be terrific. And then I will be talking about fat shaming and body positivity. The left has been telling us for years that fat shaming doesn't work because, all feminists are fat lesbians and they hate fat jokes. Well, fat shaming does work, and I'm going to explain why it works and explain, why all the studies they use are completely radically unsound. And I will try, obviously, to do it in my trademark, sensitive, delicate style and not offend anybody.
So, Milo, where can people find you on? I know the Twitterverse didn't like you. At least not necessarily the Twitter gods, I should say, didn't like you. Where can people find you on the internet?
So Facebook is one of the good places at the moment. You can just look for Milo Y or Milo Yiannopoulos on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, youtube.com/Milo Yiannopoulos, and Snapchat. If you're into that too, you can come find me on that.
Milo, I want to thank you for joining us on the Battlefield Live radio program. I hope to have you back again.
Thank you so much. I had a really good time. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, Milo. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Folks, we'll be right back after this on the Battlefield Live radio program with Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network. And I'll tweet out the places where you can find Milo Yiannopoulos in Baton Rouge tomorrow. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
You're listening to the Battlefield Live radio show.
Find the Lanterns Radio Network on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes, Player FM, YouTube, and other social media by searching keyword Lanterns Buzz or Lanterns Radio Network. You have entered onto the battlefield.
And I got to thinking about that overnight, and I said, you know what? The easy thing is to compromise your principles, to just throw in with the masses. That's the easy thing to do. What's difficult is to stand alone. What's difficult is to hold up your principles over the politics and the politicians and the parties and the personas and the personalities and the people.
Go to radio.battlefield.buzz to get showtimes, the latest audio and video podcast, links to our affiliates and social media sites, and latest announcements from the Battlefield Live radio program. We are here to fix the machine.
Doug, I never thought I could go back to school, but when it's this easy, it fits.
I'm right there with you, Jackie, taking classes, watching lectures in the living room on the iPad. It's not hard.
I can be a mom, make dinner, get my classwork done, and not miss a moment with my family. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Hey, it's Jackie Velasquez, and if Doug and I can do this, you can do this too. Higher education with Liberty University Online.
Find out more about completing your college degree at the world's largest Christian university, Liberty University. Get all the details right now. Grab your cell and dial pound 250. When prompted, say the keyword Liberty University.
Training champions for Christ since 1971, Liberty University Online. Find out more about learning online. Dial pound 250, then say the keyword Liberty University.
Liberty University Online with hundreds of degree programs to choose from. Call now, pound 250. Say the keyword Liberty University.
That's pound 250. Say keyword Liberty University.
You have entered onto the battlefield.
I can say this with a straight face. Every single time that I heard a complaint from a conservative about Barack Obama playing golf, I said, what the hell are you complaining about? I want him to play golf 365 days a year. At least he's not trying to screw up the country even further. Do we want gridlock? Of course we want gridlock. The nature of the Constitution is gridlock. This idea that we have to go make deals and get things done, that is not what the country's about. That is not what the Constitution is about. That is not what our founders did. Our founders didn't put a Constitution together to grease the skids, if you will, to get things done, quote unquote. That's not what the country was set up to be.
Go to radio.battlefield.buzz to get showtimes, the latest audio and video podcast, links to our affiliates and social media sites, and latest announcements from the Battlefield Live radio program. We are here to fix the machine.
We're here to fix the machine.
Battlefield Live.
For sticking with me on the battlefield. Listening to Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network. Folks, make sure, if you enjoy the show, that you can go to our page at, let's see, you can find us on Spreaker. Just do a keyword search for Lanterns Buzz on Spreaker.com. You can also find us on SoundCloud. You can subscribe to our show there, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, where else? Player FM, and YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at Paul Revere again, at Lanterns Buzz, and you can find us at the same places on Facebook at Lanterns Buzz and at Paul Revere again. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Red Nation Rising Radio Network. They do a very good job of supporting the cause of conservatism and freedom in America. And also want to give a big shout-out to all of our friends at Lanterns Radio Network. We are working very hard to get Lanterns.Buzz website to where it needs to be. The website is actually operational. It's really a lot of really cool content there, but there's a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that I'm excited to be able to share at some point. I just can't do it now for a lot of different reasons, for business and so forth. But there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Well, I can tell you, folks, that the more and more I watch Milo, read Milo's work, I get a different perspective. The first time that I think I heard Milo, I was like right on, but I was a little bit kind of skeptical about where he stood, at least intellectually, on America. And by this conversation that I had tonight, I do truly believe that this is a really smart guy. I think some of his tactics may come across, and I've seen an interview where a guy called him childish. I don't know that they're childish necessarily. I think they are intended to, I guess you could say, like a means to an end. In some cases, the tactics, not necessarily ideologically, but the tactics are somewhat progressive. In other words, he's speaking the language of the left with an ideological right wing background, and it's uncomfortable to somebody like me that knows that the tactics of I guess the tactics seem inflammatory, and knowing that this is something that he's doing, it makes me nervous, because it's not so much trusting Milo as much as trusting the people that follow Milo. And I like the way that he explained the alt-right and the fact that there are parts of the alt-right that are racist, that are anti-Semitic. He's not shy about saying that. And what I find, that's truthful about it, or what's the best word? You got to mind with me, folks. I've been a little bit under the weather today, so my mind is a little bit cloggy. I'm on medication and stuff like that. So I just think that it's I think that what's different about the tactics that Milo utilizes from that of the left is that the left denies that there's any racism on the left at all. Milo will tell you that there is racism in the alt-right. He'll mention that it's a small fraction. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes about of the alt-right, because my nervousness of it is, it's really in the question that I asked him about the reaction to the progressive left has morphed from the Tea Party into the alt-right movement. And the alt-right movement, it has some of the features and facets of European right-wing fascism. And that's a concern of mine. And so where does it go? What is the ends, right? Can Milo, as much as he hates to say that he's not the leader of this movement, I think he's one of the leaders. And is he capable of steering a large portion of this movement in the proper direction in regards to American principle? One of the things that frustrates me about Donald Trump, and one of the reasons why I haven't been able to support Donald Trump in the way that some on the right have, is that Donald Trump doesn't articulate what has made America great. He wants to make America great again, but what has made America great? That is what I get concerned about, is his ability to explain that. Now, when he gets in office, he may surround himself with a bunch of people that will put us in the right place. But that's to be seen, right? I have some serious questions about Bannon and Roger Ailes. I have concerns about them, because I see them as a little bit separated from the ideological bearings that I follow. And I get concerned about that. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, I thought the interview was a really good interview, and it's really cool to see that he's willing to spend that much time with us on the Battlefield Live. So exciting things coming up on Lanterns Radio Network, folks. I can't stress enough that you have to go to Lanterns Radio Network and check out all the talent there. We're getting to the point now where we're starting to turn some heads. And while we are a radio network, we're content providers. We're providing not just radio content or podcasts. We're also providing written blogs from some pretty great writers. We're going to be providing video. Also, when I do these shows, all the articles, all the stuff that I talked about with Milo tonight will be in the archive of the show. So if you want to read more about some of the comments that I made out of articles that not only Milo had written, but what people have written about Milo, you can go read the articles that are attached to the episode on lanterns.buzz. So tonight, after I download the podcast and I, we do a little production to get everything lined up when we upload it to Lanterns Radio Network, we'll also make sure that we post all the articles in the archives for you to be able to find. But one of the things that we have to do, and I think one of the things that Milo has been so successful in doing, is that we have to energize people on the right. And I'm not just talking about the people on the right politically. I'm talking about energizing the people that are right. Because the fact of the matter is that America is great because America is good. And if we lose sight of that, if we lose sight of the Constitution as the guide to what our government should be, and we lose track of the Declaration of Independence is the purpose of the United States, we're going to have problems. And I'm hoping that, as Milo said, that the optimism that he has, I hope it exists there. Because I get really concerned about these cultures on the campuses and how they're really doing a disservice to our youth. It scares the hell out of me. And it's been, ever since I got into this movement, what's happened to colleges. And I mean, in our book, Deus Ex Machina, The Progression of Secular Socialism, we wrote extensively about how the education system has been co-opted by the left. And I think that people like Milo and others that are outwardly attacking the political correctness crowd, I think they're going to bring about some good results in the meantime. So, folks, I want to thank you for joining me on the battlefield today. You've been listening to Chris Pilier from Lanterns Radio Network. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at Paul Revere Again. You can also find us on Facebook at Paul Revere Again. Also, likely, you can find us at Lanterns Buzz on Twitter, as well as at Lanterns Buzz on Facebook. Visit lanterns.buzz, the website lanterns.buzz, for all of your conservative talk needs, libertarian talk needs. We are right, and we're here to fix a machine. So check us out there, and we'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll talk to you later. Tater.